I'll call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers, August 8th, 2024. No members of the public, so we'll move to a roll call. I'm sorry. All managers are present, but for Manager Hejmati. And I would like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Manager Maxwell. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Miller. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Note that we have a financial report for the second quarter in the information items. That's great. And on the consent agenda, we have...
Before we move on.
Yes.
Does the treasurer have any comments about the financial report?
I think at halfway through the year, there were a few notes by Deb and our accountant about how, some of quarter one and quarter two payments have been made already, and therefore it looks like it'll be over, but it's just a timing thing, and it's just a one-year payment thing. What I always look at on those reports is I read Deb's cover letter very carefully because she's very good at summarizing. And then there's a really nice page of notes that correlate to each line and help explain what the over or under is. And I think the accountant does a good job on that. But generally, everything's looking like it's going to end on budget, and tax collections came in July, so it always appears like we didn't get tax levy revenue, but we did. It's received. So I appreciate those reports. I think it starts to get interesting in quarter two and quarter three, and kind of start watching some of the line items a little closer, but generally speaking, everything is where it should be at halfway through the year. And any questions I always come up with, they got answered if I just look at the footnote connection. So I think they do a nice job. I appreciate the work that Deb does to get it in shape. So thank you.
Thank you.
The consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of the July 25th board meeting and one resolution. 24043 is authorization to contract with Bartlett Tree Experts for Cottageville Park Oak Care. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Manager Olson, I'll take a second from you, Manager Miller.
Sure.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I have one meeting to report on. The Hopkins Liaisons Group met a couple of weeks ago, almost, and all 5 of the member liaisons were there, the mayor and Councilmember Hunke and Managers Hejmati and Maxwell and I, so that was good communication. And the next step we have is to have a workshop for the city and Hopkins and Lattice, and staff is working to coordinate meeting times for that workshop. Manager Loftus, can you report on Operations and Programs Committee?
Yes, we had a meeting earlier this evening. We got an introduction of a new staff member, Abigail Couture. There she is. It's nice to hear some of her background. And then we had a presentation by staff and a guest speaker, the engineer from the city of Victoria, about the big transportation projects that are happening in Carver County and some of their environmental impacts. Big project on Highway 5, changing it from 2 to 4 lanes. Project on 82nd and also 11, and then also lots of trail connections that they were excited about. So got a nice overview and briefing on those projects, which will be headed our way for permitting in the next 12 to 24 months. So nice update for us. That was it.
Yes, great. Our upcoming meetings for committee and board are listed in the agenda, as well as the CAC meeting on September 18th, which will be attended by Manager Hejmati as the board liaison. Are there any other meetings or events people want to report on? Going to action items 11.1, Resolution 24044. Mr. Heyman presenting on approval of the capital improvement plan.
Good evening, Madam Chair and managers. Before you this evening, seeking adoption of the 2025 Capital Improvement Plan. As you know, each year, as described in our watershed management plan, we do revise and distribute our 10-year CIP to all of our member communities and counties for 30-day review and comment. The process is really to not only identify which projects are in feasibility and planning phases, as described in the plan, but also identify new project opportunities, any shifts in district priorities, and then, of course, communicate the staff and financial capacity for the upcoming years. The projects are continually being developed through this process, and it certainly allows us to work closely with our stakeholders to communicate around what opportunities exist in their cities. As you heard during the committee, some of the future project opportunities that we know we can align with our member communities a little bit more flexibly. And so, as is the case every year, the CIP was accompanied with a letter that reinforces our model of integrated planning and promotes early coordination with our member communities. We also included a minor plan amendment this year that's being led by Policy Planning, Kate Moran, to offer up the opportunity for the 30-day comment period for the Calvary Church project in Deep Haven. The CIP this year also, or again, included our multi-year CIP initiative, which really takes that step further, and we've heard from our communities year after year now that this was our third year of doing it, that they like the improved clarity around what it is we have for project initiatives in the more more recent years and the upcoming years in terms of planning, design, construction, and warranty, and really offers an opportunity to improve our communication, our external communications to our member communities, as it's an annual distribution. That's something that's required, and we know it's a touch point that we can leverage to be something more. So as is typical, each partner agency receives the 10-year CIP broken out by sub-watershed. They receive the new 5-year CIP table, which predicts what phase each project is in over the forthcoming 5 years. And then they get the project one-pagers for every project that's in planning or design, so for each of the initiatives presently going on within the watershed. This year, the 2025 CIP process began in May with the development of the draft budget. That was reviewed by the board both during the May PPC and the June OPC committee meeting, and then the board authorized its release at the June 27th meeting. The CIP was released in that full package, the cover letter and the 3 documents, on July 1st for a 30-day comment period, and would be followed by adoption in August once comments have been received and considered as part of the draft. And we did receive comments from 2 partners, the City of Edina and the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Edina was just a positive email we get from them often every year, where they're noting that they really appreciate working closely with the district and are promoting ongoing coordination on their shared clean water and flood protection priorities. And they did provide a copy of their draft CIP as well, and they were highlighting which projects are part of their clean water or flood initiatives, so we can continue conversations over the next 3 to 5 years, since they
Could you
align.
share that with the board?
I can send that up to
That'd
the
be
board,
great. Thank
absolutely. Yep. And then Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, we did receive comments after the close of the comment period and right after the board packet had been posted, but I did want to just note those for the board. Again, they were noting support for exploring the Meadowbrook Golf Course Ecological Restoration and Greenway project. They did express a desire to explore internal loading initiatives for Cedar Lake and Nokomis Lake, which is something we have been talking with the City and Park Board through the steering committee efforts. They noted that they will be studying trash and nutrient issues at Powderhorn Lake, and was something they'd like to continue conversations with us as they pursue those studies, and then expressed a desire to continue the collaboration around our management unit approach for the receiving water bodies that we're looking at as part of the steering committee process or the cooperative agreement process with the city. So the comments we received there.
Madam Chair?
Very positive. Yes.
What was the level of interest in Meadowbrook?
Manager Miller, Chair and managers, they simply had a bullet point that noted they're excited to continue working or to pursue the Meadowbrook Golf Course Ecological Restoration Project, and would look forward to continued conversations on that. So it was just noting that they recognize it's still in our CIP and it's something that they're interested in continuing conversations around.
Is that on our program?
We do have a project one-pager, and it's within our CIP and notes the years that we anticipate planning and investing, and so they were voicing support for that again,
Okay.
but didn't indicate what that might look like.
you know, we had the plan, I don't know, it's gotta be 10 years ago now.
14.
Would there be need for revising that at all? There's not much has changed.
Yeah. Manager Miller, Chair White and managers. So we've taken 2 attempts at the Meadowbrook Golf Course project. The first one would have been following the 2014 floods. We designed the golf course. That was a full redesign with a new driving range, new clubhouse. That would have been 2015, 2016. And then they did receive bids and ended up rejecting bids and not advancing that project, restored it to its previous flood conditions with some few dollars they've received. I think they reopened the course in early 2017. Fall of 2017 into spring of 2018, we looked at the 3-hole configuration. So if we just modify holes 5, 6, and 7, where Minnehaha Creek is actually ditched through the site, we could actually create the corridor, the trail corridor along the eastern boundary of the property and keep golf separate from that. And they supported that effort as well, but as we pursued easements or agreements to construct that, it sort of hit some hurdles or roadblocks and ended up falling off again. So I think that's most likely the first plan set we could dust off. They were quite supportive of the design of it. There were concerns on impact to golf operations during construction. You know, a 15-hole course for a period of time when those 3 holes are under construction, but it sounds as though they're interested in continuing a conversation around that. That may be the opportunity or the catalyst for conversations around more flood mitigation, which that site would really be useful for, and was actually the main focus of the original design, where we could keep a high and dry 13 holes and have a significant amount of floodplain restoration, as well as protect the homes in Edina that are flooded through the golf course during the 100-year events.
Thank you.
So with that, Resolution 24044 is for adoption of the 2025 capital improvement plan. And I would take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Heyman. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Manager Loftus moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Sando seconds. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Good job, folks.
The next item is Resolution 24038, adoption of the Strategic Action Plan, presented by Mr. Whisker.
Thank you, President White and managers. Hopefully you're as excited as I am tonight to be reviewing the 2024 Strategic Action Plan. I'm going to be asking the board to consider adopting it this evening. Just kind of by way of background, I think that this is the board's 3rd time reviewing the plan. You did a lot of work on this as a team in 2023. Earlier this year in committee, I think it was February, there was a discussion, and then it was subsequently reviewed, and we got great feedback and incorporated that feedback into edits from both the Citizens Advisory Committee and then from staff through an all-staff retreat, where they're really working on 2-year work plans and figuring out how those ultimately are going to dovetail with the Strategic Action Plan. And then I think the last time the board discussed this was in May. We got wonderful feedback. I think 90% of it was really positive, and the other 10% was just really constructive. We got great suggestions from the board and Lewis with regards to the partnership or outreach section. We've since taken another look at that and incorporated that feedback, and we'll cover that in just a moment. So for tonight, a little bit of a recap, but I think it's worth it for such significant document at such significant milestone. To support the decision this evening for the board, I'm going to step you through just the plan, its structure, purpose, a little bit of the process that I probably just covered, the strategic frame in which it sits, and then the 5 key areas of focus that the board identified. So beginning with the plan structure, the document up on the front end is wrapped up with familiar strategic framing. So we have the purpose of the plan, we've got this strategic cascade, which I'll cover, which is really how does this plan sit within our organizational framework, our 10-year planning, our budget cycles, those sorts of things. And then it includes really critical information about our organization's DNA, our vision, our mission, our goals, our chosen strategy of high impact projects and policy, the guiding principles that Lewis helped us tease out from our 50+ years of history, and then the culture and core values that staff defined last year at their all hands retreat. From there, the meat of the plan or the document, these 5 areas of organizational focus that will guide us for the next 3 to 5 to 6 years. We haven't organizationally defined a perfect cadence, but these things are intended to last about 5 years. And within those areas of focus, we have framed things in terms of an objective and key result framework. And then at the end, we've taken a lot of the text and boiled it down into a pilot version of a dashboard, some implementation tables. So the board, staff, and CAC have spent time discussing the purpose and the value in having a strategic plan, and I think at its core, it simply helps us achieve the standards of excellence that the board set out for themselves and for staff, really guiding our collective efforts in support of building a resilient and thriving watershed. And this document does that by setting a due north compass heading and maintaining direction for the organization by clearly defining priorities and then aligning our actions, our initiatives, as well as our resources with our vision, our mission, and our values. It also keeps us nimble. We know the world's pretty dynamic. We went through a pandemic, other things have happened to us. So having a plan positions us to be adaptable to inevitable changes and the disruptions we'll face. If we know where we're going and what we're trying to accomplish as the world changes, we can use a rhythm of revisiting the strategic action plan to make adjustments and tweaks in our course or heading between our major 10-year plan cycles. With that clear directional heading, the strategic plan helps keep things aligned between the board, the staff, and the CAC. It helps drive programs and people to work together towards the commonly defined objectives of the watershed. And hopefully all those things together support results and underpin performance. With clear goals, we can monitor and evaluate our progress, and that helps support a really clear, transparent environment where we're continuously improving. And all of that clarity then helps us talk to each other. It gives us a shared language where we can discuss our future with each other internally, where we don't have a lot of friction and we're not talking past each other because we're using the language outlined in the document, but it also helps communicate our purpose and how we're achieving that purpose with our partners. So that's really the background on why these sorts of strategic plans are important. This is where it fits in our planning cascade. So with this strategic plan identifying these areas of focus, this portfolio of objectives, key results, and initiatives, it sits below the strategic organizational framework, which defines our vision, our mission, our goals, our principles, culture, things that we're not revisiting on a 5 or a 10-year basis, but are rather fixed, more fixed objects. It sits below our 10-year watershed plan, which we're tracking towards delivering in 2027. Those 10-year plans really describe the policy environment that we're trying to set up for a decade. So our last one had a theme of partnership, balanced urban ecology. We know our next 10-year plan is really rooted around a changing climate. And so those 10-year plans set direction. The 5-year plan sits below that to turn that very, very broad direction into actionable objectives, results that we can measure in 5-year chunks. And then I think the vision is midterm, I guess, over the next year or so, is to then start to create 2-year work plan details where below the 5-year strategic direction, staff have work plans that are chunking the initiatives into projects with key results, milestones, timelines, budget, and staff needs. And this is something that we've discussed through the budgeting process, is maybe overhauling the budget to be more initiative-based rather than program-based. And in that world, you can envision this whole cascade culminating in 2-year work plan details with the associated staff allocations and budgetary allocations. So you've got perfect linkage from your vision and mission all the way down to your 2-year funding cycles and where staff are allocated. So something to look forward to. As far as process, we began working to define what we've learned from our history and extracting those historical principles, and then we did a status check on how far have we come since trying to align in 2018. We did a lot of that work in 2022, really preparatory work for developing this strategic plan. And then in 2023, staff, I mentioned this before, they held a retreat designed by staff, for staff, to dig into what makes this place special, what are the behaviors and norms that guide us, that drive excellence. And then over the 6 months coming out of the retreat, they turned all of that idea generation, they synthesized that into a set of core values and culture document that they're then carrying forward. And at the same time, in the background, we engaged the board in a series of strategic planning workshops to start thinking about the future, what our strengths, weaknesses are, what opportunities and threats are going to be on the landscape, and that's where those 5 areas of focus emerged from. 2024 has been pulling all that together. So this is something that I mentioned on the front end. The committee reviewed the draft plan, we pushed it through CAC, we pushed it through another cycle of all staff retreat where they were doing some work planning, and then we reviewed it in May with the board. The plan also includes this kind of complementary wireframe diagram of our overall strategic frameworks. It's just a handy visual as a complement to the written text that boils down the vision, mission, goals, as well as how our 2-pronged strategy delivers on that vision, building high-impact projects with our partners and making a measurable difference in the landscape of the watershed, as well as shaping policy at the interface of land use planning and water resource management.
Where's planning?
Where's planning? Well, planning is really capital projects and policy. So we have policy planning and capital projects. Those are the really chosen kind of strategic levers that we're pulling on, is building projects through planning in the landscape and shaping policy. And that's the strategy that the board's outlined, and all of our programs are working together to kind of support that strategy.
Okay.
So this is intended to be more of a strategic framework than an org chart that describes the programmatic functions, but go ahead.
Thank you. No, I'm fine.
Okay. Off to this side, and this is laid out in the document in kind of text format. Everything's sort of a series of one-pagers, so we've got our guiding principles in there, as well as the culture that the board described. And these are just visual snapshots of that. So you'll remember the full multiple chapter historical insights and principles of success that we pulled together in 2023. That's been boiled down into a one-pager that sits on the front end of the document, as do the culture and core values that staff help define, which revolve around our values of transparency, collaboration, leadership at all levels that anybody here can lead, innovation, and moving past status quo, and the grit that it takes to do all of our high-test work. So that's kind of the front-end strategic frame, and then the meat of the document, as I mentioned, are these areas of strategic focus that evolved out of the workshop between the board and staff, and then were vetted, defined by CAC. And these 5 areas then are going to be what really guide us as our due north heading over the next 5 years. So we've got expanding our portfolio of high-impact capital projects, developing meaningful climate action policy for the watershed, cultivating strategic partnerships to create shared value, enhancing data-driven decision-making, and then finally investing in people and our organizational culture. And I'm going to step through not every section with the same level of detail, but I am going to step through every section here, and we'll take a slightly closer look, beginning with capital projects. So this is really an orientation rather than a full capture of everything that's in the document, because I know you've all read it cover to cover multiple times. So each section outlines these sub areas of focus and then the objectives for each area and key results. So capital projects, for example, are broken into our focal geographies. We've got Minnehaha Creek, Lake Hiawatha, all the way down to Painter Creek. And then underneath there, for each area, we're defining goals broadly, and then we're defining specific objectives, and then the key results or initiatives that are going to deliver on those objectives. So we've got Minnehaha Creek to Lake Hiawatha defined. We've got 6 Mile Creek, Halstead Bay, where we've got goals like delisting Wasserman Lake, progress to delisting Auburn Turbid, and then actions like partnering on the Western Growth Area with the City of Victoria, or moving feasibility for the Halstead alum facility moving that forward, things like that. We've got the Long Lake Creek, Tanager Bay area, and then finally Painter Creek. And then in each section, to kind of move beyond text, at the end we have these implementation tables, which is really just a visual representation of those one-pagers. And it's my hope moving forward we'll be able to use this periodically, maybe twice a year, certainly through the budget process, to check in and revisit how we're doing and what adjustments we might want to make. So this is intended to be a living document. So in here, as an example to show that cascade I was just walking through, we've got the focal geography of Minnehaha Creek, Lake Hiawatha. We have the goals of progressing towards delisting Lake Hiawatha, reducing flooding on Minnehaha Creek, and expanding and connecting the riparian corridor. And then it breaks those down, sort of a work breakdown structure, where we have the objectives, the key results or specific initiatives or actions that we're taking, and then some accountability framework. Who's leading, what our timelines are, and generally what the status is. And again, this is supposed to be high-level dashboard type material. Below this would be where our 2-year work plans exist, where we're really breaking down at a staff level, what is it really going to take to deliver inside this framework. So those brief tour of the capital projects. The second area of focus is developing climate action policy for the whole watershed. And here simply we've integrated the pillars from the climate action framework and then nested the specific objectives and key results. So this is really a port in, like the last one was of our capital improvement program. This is a port in from our climate action framework that walks through all of the initiatives and objectives for the understand and predict pillar, as well as how we're going to convene and plan with our communities in the coming 2 to 3 years, and then what it will look like to develop an implementation plan for that. And similarly to the capital project section, we've broken this down into a visual snapshot with implementation tables. Outside of capital projects and policy, I think central to our identity these days is partnerships. So it wasn't a surprise the board identified partnerships as a third key focus area to guide the organization. We did make changes here based on the feedback that we got last time in May. So the outcome really for these strategic partnerships is less about growing support for the district, which was loosely how things were framed last time, and instead partnerships that create shared value. So making sure that we're speaking to our partners here, knowing that they're an audience for the strategic plan, making sure that we're always of service, and that value is at the delivering value for our partners is at the center of our purpose. So this focus area obviously revolves around relationship building. So one of the areas is really focused on building coalitions of partners for our priority projects. So here is where it outlines how the types of initiatives that we're pursuing that are going to build coalitions for 6 Mile Creek, Minnehaha Creek, Painter Creek, Long Lake Creek. The next section on this one pager is fostering community support and inclusion. Really here we're looking to be a trusted source of facts and make sure that we're always strategically engaging a cross-section of our public and private partners to build both trust and support for the work. And then finally, with permitting being a primary channel of how we're engaging with the land use community, with developers, with cities, we've talked a lot about how they have maybe thousands of points of contact with landowners, planning commissions, council members, community development staff. We're viewing them and our permitting team is a critical component of our partnership or relationship infrastructure. So the third leg of the stool here is ensuring that we're driving positive permitting experiences, serving as a resource, a partner, and leader in the land use community. And that might, some of the initiatives tied in there, developing a program of routinely or cyclically, maybe on an annual basis, engaging city staff and the private development community. So positioning our permitting staff as conveners to make sure people understand how they can work with us and how we can deliver service and value to them. And making sure they're paired up with latest and greatest outreach strategies, protocol, talking points, and the training that they need to really be out in the community delivering a favorable experience. And then almost rounding home here, we've got data-driven decision-making and then investing in people and culture. So moving past the partnerships and projects and climate, this section is really building on our core principle of sound science. And the board here identified a need to continue investing in data-driven decision-making. Core goal for us is to make sure that we're using data to inform every single decision we're making, routine, day-to-day decisions, and making sure that that data is helping shape outreach and building trust. Manager Miller, I think the board and others have said, let's operate on facts, not politics. We know that fact-based, data-driven decision-making is one of the reasons we're trusted. And so that's really at the core of our whole identity. And so the things that go along with that are objectives like implementing new data collection and management systems. This has been something that's been in queue for quite a while, probably 50% of the way through the build out of that. Building a data-driven culture. This was something that Alex had really championed, and putting a work plan together, making sure we had a cross-functional group of teams that were making sure the data that exists in our whiskey database, our permitting database, GIS, is really accessible to everybody, and that we're building workflow and expectations that people are constantly pulling that data out for insights to drive planning, decisions, communications. And then finally, leveraging all that data to create new tools that help us understand the watershed, whether that's a geospatial lens that helps us understand demographics in communities. Who is it that we're working with? How are we going to engage with them? And an equity lens. Or whether it is our two-dimensional model that's mapping out where the flood risk is in communities and helping pull communities into climate action planning. And then last, but I think certainly not least, recognizing all the results we deliver as an organization are delivered in a team framework with the board, with the CAC, and with staff. We've emphasized the need to keep investing in people and culture at all of those levels, not just for staff, but the care and feeding of our CAC and making sure they have the information they need to support quality decision making, that there's no error between the board and staff, that you have the information that you need to make quality decisions in tandem with the staff group. So that comes by strategically expanding our team. I don't think we're looking to grow per se, we're just looking to fill out our current org chart, which is something that we've been working, I think, diligently at since 2018. So in here, there's things like building a recruitment strategy that broadens, deepens, and diversifies our talent pipeline. Trying to get to full team capacity within 24 months across our different work groups, things like that. We want to nurture professional growth to then ignite the potential of our team and fuel the growth and development of teams. So there's a lot of internally facing work here on tailored development plans, growth plans for our staff team, making sure they've got access to training, tuition, each other, mentors, to expand on and grow the potential of the people that we have and get the most out of everybody and make sure that we're setting up a strong team environment. And then really continue to invest in culture. I think that's one of the things that we've put a premium on for the last 5 to 8 years. And that culture really underpins excellence in every endeavor. So there's a lot of cultural work there. So, we've just taken a quick rapid fire tour, I think, of the plan's purpose, the process that we all engaged to get to this point, how it fits inside our 10-year versus 2-year planning framework. I walked you through a little bit of a deeper dive on the 5 different areas of strategic focus. My fingers are crossed, hoping everybody's pleased with the results of your effort and you finding it a clear representation of the input that you've provided. And ultimately, as you consider approving it, I'm hoping that you think it will serve as a useful beacon for the board, for staff, and for the CAC for the next 5 years. So with that, we'll see if there's questions. Otherwise, the resolutions in your packet that would adopt the strategic action plan.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution? Manager Miller moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Sando seconds. Questions, comments?
I got a comment.
Go for it.
I'm proud to be associated with this. This is really good work. I mean, it really defines what we're trying to accomplish and how we're doing it. And it's so clear, and it's almost profound as far as I'm concerned for a public body to be this organized and clarity in its mission and purpose and method of operating.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Manager Olson?
To expand upon that just a little bit, there were a lot of details that we asked you folks to take a look at, and a lot of input, and you've incorporated everything. And that depth of organization and inclusion is terrific, so thank you. Appreciate that effort.
It's really, as Manager Olson said, I can see fingerprints in here of all the different conversations we had.
Well,
It's really
but-
fun. But it's not too much and not too little. I think it's just the right amount. I like it a lot.
I will point out there's a lot of not starting in the work program.
I'm
Is
sorry.
it what?
A lot of status of not started.
Right. Because it's for the next 5 years. We're not there yet.
6 years.
We need something to do, yeah. Really.
We did.
I would also
all-
know, if we're going there, like, I really love one-pagers, but a series of one-pagers is multiple pages. But I really appreciate,
Yeah.
I really do appreciate the ability to like think of a, you know, a framework or a goal and a project and get everything I need visually on one page. So I do really appreciate all the work that went into this and all the detail that you built out with your staff on, you know, taking the priorities and making them into actions. And, you know, even though the timelines and the statuses might probably change often, just getting it down on paper makes it that much more likely to happen. So kudos to you guys. I think it's a great document. Thanks.
Good roadmap. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Whisker, and all of you. I know this is a group effort. And all of us. Are there any board inquiries, issues, or ideas to gather up this evening? If not, we'll move to you for your report, Mr. Whisker.
Thanks, President White. Right off the top, I'll just notice on page 15 of the Strategic Action Plan, 325 is in progress. Let's see here. I think we're going to start with the water level update because we got a decent amount of rain over the last 4 or 5 days. We got, according to the Hiawatha gauge, what day is it? This must have been Monday. We got 1.6 inches of rain down in Minneapolis. It came in a number of different waves. We got about ½ an inch between 10 in the morning, 5 at night, and then we got another inch 5 to 10:30. So we continue to stack up rain, even though it's been nice and warm and sunny and dry. According to the DNR that maintains a year-to-date preset chart that covers our past records and averages, the watershed so far this year has received 28.26 inches of rain. That's 8.5 inches more than normal And right now, we're sitting 1.4 inches below the wettest year on record. So it's waxed and waned, and right now we're sitting with a decent amount of water. That's obviously had an impact on water levels, despite the dam discharge being consistently at around 100 cubic feet per second for the last 2.5, maybe 3 weeks. We saw a measured increase in Minnehaha Creek stage elevations due to flash and runoff from the urban environment from the storm. We've talked about this before. The further upstream you go, the less bounce we get. So West 34th, this is just upstream of kind of Target Millwood area. We saw a 1/3 of a foot increase due to the storm. Middle of the creek, West 56, down in Edina, we saw almost 9/10 of a foot, and the water levels remained quite high there since. Down in Bloomington Avenue, the Nokomis area of the creek, significant bounce. We got 1.9 feet of change in just several hours due to those rain events. And one of the things that's really fascinating is even with the dam discharge being low, we're not seeing the creek, the receding limbs of the hydrograph drop off really steep. And what that's telling us, combined with the well data that we have up and down the creek from Ryan, is all of the rain that we've accumulated this season has gone into an underground container, this surficial groundwater. So we're not just having runoff hit the channel and leave to the river. That underground container, the groundwater is relatively full. So even with limited dam discharge, the water levels are remaining close to bank full. And that groundwater is just continuing to find the channel and move its way downstream. So we have high water levels even though we're in the middle of August on the creek. And on the lake, we've seen water levels recede due to evaporation and the fact that we had higher dam discharge through the month of July. So upstream through the storm, the lake did come up. It came up about 1/10 of a foot. It's back around 929.6, which places it in zone 1 and is calling for maximum allowable discharge for the creek. But it's down significantly from July. We were touching around the emergency spillway elevation. So we do have a pretty dry forecast. We'll keep an eye on the creek. Dam discharge has been adjusted over the last couple of days up to 200 cubic feet per second, and we'll keep the information flowing. We've had some good report outs to our emergency manager friends in Edina. I think things have generally cooled off. People aren't necessarily looking for it. We've done some proactive pushes of information to them. To friends at the park board, they're operating the Nokomis Weir, behind which Lake Nokomis is at its highest elevation all season, so they're working to open the weir and get some relief for the lake level there. And we'll be pushing a broader water level update to all of our communities, I think, tomorrow.
Do we have any phone volume of citizens calling about
Pretty quiet.
the creek level?
Yep, I think, when it was really kind of high on the lake, high on the creek, and it was raining 2-3 times a week, that was just driving higher level of attention, plus the media really picked those stories up, and we're pushing a lot of attention towards water levels, both in our region and then highlighting what was happening up north and happening down the Mankato to Austin area. So it's been pretty quiet on the phone lines.
What's the flow over the falls right now? Roughly know?
The flow down at Hiawatha is, I think, like 200. I should have that right here, but
Okay.
I've been watching it today. It's come down from 260 to 268 is where we're at.
Okay, so we're not that too much.
Yeah, the storm really doubled flow in the creek down at the Hiawatha gauge, so it came up from 200 cubic feet per second. I've started to transition towards stage because I think it's easy for us to understand. The creek came up 2 feet, but in terms of cubic feet per second down at Hiawatha gauge, it came up from about 217 almost to 400, just from that storm, that 1.6 inches that we got. So pretty big
Is
deal.
400 like a record? Is that a?
No. 400's kind of bank full. In that area, you might get some out of bank flow, some squishiness out around the very, very edge of the creek and the kind of the golf course area, the parkway. But in 2019, as an example, we've been using that as a comparable. We saw 600. I think 2014, we were at like 8 plus.
So that's when the arc increases at the falls,
Yeah.
instead of being focused in the center.
The falls are still definitely roaring and worth
Right.
visiting. So
Yeah.
I've seen them a couple times this season. And I think our staff were down there yesterday. Yeah. It's not dry, is it? Yeah.
Thank you.
I wonder if you have any data to support the term squishiness.
Well, just wet shoes.
Ah.
I did go for a walk near the golf course and I came back and had to change socks. Let's see, what else? I think I provided an update at the last meeting regarding our progress on the preserve boardwalk. And I signaled that the engineering package was ready for submittal to the City of St. Louis Park, and we're waiting on our contractor JTS and their attorney. That submittal was made this week. We've reopened dialogue with the City of St. Louis Park. Their building official reached out, had a few questions. We're going to be speaking with them, I think maybe in the next day or two, and then we're scheduling a meeting with the contractor, their attorney, the building officials at City Hall. We'll go through the alternatives package. And hopefully that leads us towards a systematic plan of uncovering section by section the boardwalk, with the building officials looking over the contractor's shoulder. They'll identify which range of deficiencies are within that section, map that against the list of defective work. We've got 11 categories and what the chosen solutions are for each. They'll agree on what the solutions are for that section. They'll implement those, come back and inspect it in the afternoon and move on to the next section. So we're inching closer towards having our contractor, I think, in the field and getting those final fixes in place.
I'm just glitching on the engineering firm.
SRF is our engineering firm.
And are they going to be on site for these reviews?
SRF will be on site as our design engineer providing construction oversight. I think the reason, I was remiss in not mentioning them, the reason I was emphasizing the city is they've made it very, very clear that they're going to be watching every single point of correction, and they're going to see it uncovered, and then they're going to validate what's actually been corrected before each section gets covered up again. So it'll be a team effort between staff on site, SRF, our design engineer, and then, of course, the city. Good question.
I indicated earlier that we're a board of managers, but we can't act as an individual. We got to act as a majority of the board. There's a tree that blocks the view of my daily drive into the parking lot over there. You cannot see down Excelsior Boulevard when you're driving out of that driveway. And I want permission from the board to cut it down. It's not a very big tree, but it blocks enough so there's going to be an accident there. And,
That little parking lot by Jack's Olson?
the parking lot on Excelsior. And it's about a 2-minute deal to cut it down, but I don't want to do it on my own without the board's approval.
Good.
Drive into it. Drive into it.
Yeah, well, somebody's going to drive into it if we don't cut it down pretty soon. So.
Perhaps we can ask staff to look into that.
Hmm?
Perhaps we can ask staff just to look at that.
I think it'll be cheaper if Manager Miller tackles it.
Okay.
Yeah, I got plenty of chainsaws and everything.
Manager Miller brought that to my attention earlier this week, and in Josh's absence, taken over with a little bit of help from Stantec with edge management contracts. We have 4 of them for our different service areas. Landbridge is the company that manages the Greenway. We're doing a walkthrough on August 13th from Cottageville Park to Methodist. I've noticed similar things that I've relayed to Manager Miller. That was kind of a safety issue. There's other areas where you've got volunteer woody species taking over tamaracks, a couple of kind of viewshed issues. And they have been out this season maintaining for invasives, but I think one of the things that we want to do is just tighten up the controls with our contractor and set a new standard for the aesthetic and the safety that we're managing for, in addition to the ecological integrity. And that was really at the heart of this goal of retooling our veg contracts. You'll remember when Josh was in front of you, They were extended. I think that was like the third time the contracts were extended, and we're supposed to be putting those out for RFP every 24 months. They are gonna get retooled this year, and that's part of that repackaging. And we're using the time between now and the fall to meet with each contractor and ask them, exactly what they've seen over the last couple of years, what the burn rate on the budget's been, which we know, but we want to test and kind of squeeze and apply some accountability, and then let them know this is the level at which we're expecting management and maintenance to occur on the site. And a lot of that should get reconciled this fall, but then when we retool the contracts, and they're open back up for competition, I think we'll have set a new bar for how we want the vegetation management to work in those kind of higher access, more visible sites like the Greenway. So the board could act on the motion, and Dick could get out there with a chainsaw, but also Landbridge is ready.
I mean, I'm serious, it's really dangerous, you can't see down Lancaster Boulevard. So, also move that, I'd be given the authority to cut the tree down.
I'm not willing to make that motion. I'm thinking about insurance and all kinds of things.
It's just not, it's not a big tree.
Is it
Is it a boulevard tree from, on
No,
Salem Park?
it's on our property.
Okay, because otherwise, I was gonna say, you'd have to get permission from Salem
No.
Park to cut the tree down.
yeah.
Okay.
If it was in Hopkins, you could just cut it down.
Yeah,
Do what?
we just wanna cut it down already.
Is it oak?
Do what?
Is it an oak?
Yeah. No, it's not, it's a fast-growing,
Junk
Popple.
tree.
yeah.
I've had similar experiences, and I've contacted the city, Edina's forester, and I said, I'll just take care of it tomorrow,
Yeah.
and I went to go down there, and he was down there at like 6:30 in the morning doing it himself, and part of it was, again, this liability thing.
Yeah.
That's why he got out there and did it.
No, I got liability.
No, I think it's bad, but I think we got a tree person that's gonna go through the areas that should be able to pick it out and say when they could take it down, I think.
Okay, whatever.
If we
Can
see
you
this,
tag it in some way, or
Hmm?
does James just know which tree you're talking about, or can you tag it?
Well, you drive out of the driveway and you'll know it.
You'll know,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, if it's gone tomorrow, we'll know what happened.
Yeah.
Well, no, I can't do it, I exposed. It's on our property, it's not on St. Louis Parks or the county, on the county road.
thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Hmm?
Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah,
I promise we'll get it taken.
that wasn't what I was looking for, but anyhow.
Nope, it'll be done by next meeting.
A few other kind of loose end notes for the board. I think we were talking about a golf course earlier this evening in context of the capital improvement plan. I had heard, and I haven't gone back and watched the video, but the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, they had a committee meeting last night to consider moving the schematic design contract forward for the Hiawatha Golf Course. Sounds like that didn't necessarily make it out of committee. There's been some discussion and concern expressed from committee members, from what I understand, about funding and reallocation of funding from one project to another. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there and what the plan is to move that forward, but I have a meeting tomorrow with Michael Schroeder, and I'll get some more information on that. In the permitting world, I wanted to bring the board's attention to a proposal that I think is probably going to be in front of you at some time in September. This is a dredging proposal on Lake Minnetonka. There's a proposal to dredge a backwater area located on Crystal Bay. It's locally known as Grandpa's Bay. This is an area that hasn't been dredged for navigation before, and so those are ones that rise to kind of a higher level of policy scrutiny. The application's been under review, I think, since May-ish. We've received some written comment from the DNR expressing concerns with the proposal and how it fits or does not fit within their general permit We're finalizing some sort of last submittals with the applicant and technical review, and then we'll be bringing that forward for a board decision in September. Just the reason for flagging that is you don't see dredging permits in front of the board very routinely, and this is the reason why, is most of the dredging proposals that we see are for areas that already have existing navigational access. A lot of the variances or exceptions that you see are for, stormwater or floodplain or, kind of typical construction projects. So this is one where I've made a determination. I think this one should come in front of the board for discussion.
Can you generally tell us where it is on the bay?
North side of the bay, off the west side of the regional trail.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Near
I
the
don't
park.
Yeah, near the park. I can send out a map at some point to the board unless you want me to bring it up right now.
You mean Nuremberg?
Is Grampus Bay just a local
Yes.
colloquial name?
Yeah,
It's not on the map?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, that's not helpful. That's Crystal Bay on the other side of the country. Okay, so Sound Lake Minnetonka, north side of Crystal Bay, west of the trail. I can send out a map for folks, but like I said, there's a dredging proposal in an area that hasn't been dredged before, and so we'll be bringing that forward for your consideration. And then the final thing that I would give the board a report on tonight is we've been moving through the 2D modeling workshops with our consultant HDR. I think we're on workshop number 3. We had our second one yesterday and our third one today. And I'm learning a lot. We're talking about 2D mesh resolution, topographic land surface, the resolution of pipe networks. So, how small of a pipe? Are we going to include pipes down to 10 inches, 12 inches, 24 inches, laterals, catch basins? Today we spent a lot of time talking about unconfined layers or confining layers in geology and our groundwater mesh, and how deep the groundwater two-dimensional honeycombs, how deep those are going to go. We've really been focusing on what the technical inputs into the model are going to be. And there's a lot of left and right type decisions, very, very kind of heady technical decisions to be made. And Brian's been doing a phenomenal job with the consultant and making sure that we've got our third-party technical advisors from Virginia Tech and the purveyors of the model and others there to kind of QA, QC decision making. And we've really been pushing the team, HDR, I think, a little bit outside their comfort zone, because it's easy to talk technician to technician, engineer to engineer, modeler to modeler, and say, this is the way we should do it. This is a better way to do it. We'll have faster computational run times. And Brian keeps pulling them out. We had a good discussion today on everybody needs to understand what the trade-offs are in these decisions, so that when we get to a finished model build, we understand why it was put together the way it is. Because the model is going to be really, really good at some things, a little bit less good at other things, and not capable or out on the outside edges of its capability for other things. And we don't want to be surprised when we get to the end about what it can and cannot do really well, because our policy team has to interface with policymakers from our communities, city engineers, and we want to be able to build trust through that process. So that's my report out there. I think Brian's just doing a terrific job focusing on goals and outcomes and not just staying in the technical zone. And I really appreciated that, because it's pretty dense material. So we're making good progress, and I would expect at some critical milestone there'll be maybe a more full report out from HDR and Brian to either committee or the board. Rather like the admin report tonight, but that's everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.